Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Reena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. All right, so we're back today to talk about attracting staff to the office in a post-pandemic market. This is a big one because, like we've talked about, it's a hard market to find people. So I want us to kind of dive into how do we creatively attract people to the market? How do we staff our offices now? If we do have team members that leave, how do we solve this problem of actually staffing our office? So I wanted to kind of pick your brain on things that you feel like you've done, maybe even breaking it down to as simply as what's a good job post? What tends to attract the right attention? So can you kind of weigh in on what you've done?
Sure. And I think we've had another podcast too, where we talked about, retention of employees. And so, if anybody listened to that, I'm kind of echoing some of the same, because this kind of ties in with that.
It ties in. Yep.
And so I feel like, now more than ever, it's hard to find an employee. I mentioned in the last podcast, there was a time, 2 years ago that I could put a post out on Dental Post or Indeed or wherever I was posting on and get, 40, 50 applications. At one point, 10 years ago, it was like 80 applications. So it's kind of dwindled from there.
Yeah.
And I've never really thought to analyze why, but nonetheless, here we are. And now I put a post. I just put one out, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I've gotten, I think, 11.
Wow.
And of the 11, I want to say 3 are repeat offenders. Like I've already either interviewed them before or whatever, and they've not connected the dots that I'm the same one, or I weeded them out previously for whatever reason. So really kind of dealing with 8 applications right now, which is just mind boggling. And there's only 8 people. So it is me going, did I not word my post right?
Yeah.
And so I think normally 2 years ago, that's kind of where I was like, what did I do with my posting? Like, do I need to tweak and am I not hitting the right crowd with the right, words, etc. But now, certainly post-pandemic, when you see signs everywhere about everybody's looking to hire, etc. So, I don't think it's my post that was the problem.
Right.
I will say, and again, you can tell me if, if you're like, no, your post is garbage. I'm sitting here tooting my horn going, oh, I had this great post. I do feel like the people now that I've gotten of the 8 that aren't repeat offenders, they are more of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So to me, that says maybe my post was spot on in saying, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Do you meet that?
Yeah.
And
that's kind of a blessing of having fewer candidates to sort through, because I think, to your point, they're being inundated with job posts everywhere. Walk down the sidewalk and you're going to have every business saying that you're hiring. And so your job post is very specific on what we're looking for. So you may not be getting the 80, but you're getting 8 that really fit the bill. So you are being clear enough in that job post where they're going, you know what, I'm not going to apply at every place I've just walked past, but I am going to apply to this job post because this one speaks to me. So,
Right. Now, and I'd have to go back and read the job post, but specifically because that's not what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
For me, I was just trying to say, hey, how can I woo you? What would look good? So in that side, it is kind of weird. That's like, who wouldn't want to work here? This sounds amazing. So shouldn't I have 80? So I don't know what to say. I think it's the post-pandemic still that it's just that people are, if you're already in an office and you're happy, you're not looking to move. And, anyway, so I think things that we've put in our job post, I kind of described the office I'm looking for. We're a small office. I think one thing that people like that does stand out that I hear that people say back about, of why they applied, that we have good hours. We're very, mindful of, I think I put in there, no late evening and no weekend hours. Now I know that that can't be true for a lot of offices out there, but it is true for us. So I want to make sure I tout that.
Yeah.
The downside of that are the people that I'm not getting are the ones who want their 40 plus hours a week.
Yeah.
And so those people are going, what? You don't do this. Like, I need to work more.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to apply there. So maybe it is working in that regard.
Yeah.
So I think the post, if there are any perks that you do offer,
to clearly put that in there.
And I know that's something that I used to not do, 2 years ago. And then when we were struggling more 2-ish years ago, I think we did fine tune, because I think before that I had a very vague post.
Yeah.
Small, busy pediatric dental office looking for, whatever. It was 2 sentences long.
Yeah.
And in my mind, my strategy was the vaguer I leave it, is that a word? The more vague it is, the more people might be like, yeah. But I think, like you said, it was kind of that dartboard. I'm just going to see who sticks.
Yeah.
And at one point I had a post that I thought was funny. Like, I think I was trying to be a, jokester. And I was like, oh, the people that are going to appreciate this. Cause I think I put something like, if you have typos, then you're not going to fit, like something. I was kind of like being snarky, but I was like, but people who get it, well, and I think I had like 2 applicants, and I was like, okay, nobody else cares for
Everybody's afraid to submit.
They're like, weirdo. So I quickly, I think like 2 days later, I was like, okay, it's not working. I changed the post back. So I don't know. Was that the question you were asking me?
Well, I think you hit on a couple things that I want to circle back to, because number one, I feel like it has changed from when we used to put up a job post. It was almost like, if you like it, come on and apply. And I feel like now you mentioned the word woo. It's definitely more of a wooing process. Like, it's almost like we're putting all of our glitz and glam out on this job post because we want to attract people. First of all, we want it to be attractive. But secondly, we are trying to attract people who are looking for what we have to offer. So if we do have good work hours, that absolutely needs to be on there. If we have a really good, small privately owned practice, and we know that a lot of people are attracted to that, great, let's put that out there. If we've got a good location, so sometimes people need a central location based on where their lives are happening outside. So all of that can kind of be incorporated into the job post. It's more like it's marketing a position now, whereas previously it was like, okay, here's what we've got, take it or leave it. Now it's more like, oh, don't you want to work here? Look at how great we are. And we're kind of sprinkling in the good thing. We're not fabricating anything. We're just putting the positive facts in there. And I think that's one of the things that...
Absolutely. Previously, you're absolutely right. Previously, it never occurred to me to do that, because I was like, well, I don't want to say that I can offer this or I can't offer this, or maybe you're only coming because you think you're going to get this. Yeah. And, so it's like, I didn't want somebody else to have all the cards, really.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I'm going to just show my hand. This is what I got. Like, I just...
Please like it.
Yeah, please like it. Exactly.
Please like
come.
Me.
Yes. So yes.
I think that's a big one. Also, I feel like some of the things that I don't know that you've tested this yet, but I've got a client that I'm thinking about right now that we've been trying for months to find an RDA. And so we've had to get really creative, because our typical dental post, so you mentioned dental post, that's one of the more popular ones. Indeed is a popular one. Even Craigslist can be popular for attracting some people. So those are kind of more of the common realms, and we haven't gotten anything. We've done both dental post and Indeed. And so trying to even think outside of that box and going, okay, if I only get the 8 candidates from dental post and Indeed, and none of those are what I'm looking for, well, first of all, we may need to reevaluate what we're looking for, because is our standard too high? Or are we trying to find that round hole for our round circle that we're trying to fill? So we may need to reevaluate that. But I think beyond that, we may have to kind of broaden our horizons of where else are we looking? If those job posts aren't satisfying us, how do we then get more applicants? So things like Facebook, putting a post out on your office Facebook page. And again, I think we have to be a little bit creative. We wouldn't want it to be the same type of job post like on dental post, where it's very clearly more of a job post, but it's a creative little post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever we're posting on that just says, we are always looking for fantastic members to add to our team. If you happen to be looking for a job, send in your information.
So this might be a topic for a different podcast, but I think me personally, I don't personally Facebook, so I'm very much out of touch with all of that. And obviously that's probably a great way to reach people. I think one hesitation I've had with that is, well, what if this patient's mom replies and then that's a weird interaction? So do you have any feedback on
that? Is you're predictable on this one.
What do I do before that bomb goes off? I want to make sure I've
Yeah, so that's why I don't like it to look like an actual job post. I want it to look like, hey, we're always accepting applications. You never know when we're going to have to grow our team and expand our team, because we want to create enough ambiguity in that Facebook post that if the crazy mom contacts our office, they're like, oh, I saw your Facebook post. Are you hiring right now? Well, I'm not sure. I know we're always accepting applications, so I'd love to go ahead and submit your application, and we're always keeping it on file. If we're not hiring now, you never know. We may be hiring one day in the future. And so there becomes this loose timeline that we're essentially trying to create so that if we do get a crazy parent or a crazy patient that is applying, we didn't commit to anything. We didn't say on that Facebook post, we are hiring. We just said, hey, we're always looking to build up our applications that we keep on file. So we have to be a little bit careful on Facebook for that specific reason. Okay. We don't want to offend a patient or a parent by not
pursuing them as an applicant.
Accepting their interest in the position. But if we leave it vague enough, they don't know that we're actually hiring or not. So yeah, that's what I would say to that. And I think also we got to have somebody monitoring. If we're going to put that little blib out there on Facebook, we've got to have somebody that's actually monitoring that, so that sometimes we put out Facebook posts and we never go back and look at them again. And so if we're going to do that, we actually have to monitor the activity on that. Also, I would say if we don't want to do it on our own office Facebook page, getting team members to post on their personal pages, hey, our office may be looking to hire, come work with me or something like that, or mommy groups. So a lot of mom groups have Facebook pages. So I live in McKinney. So McKinney Moms is our big Facebook page, and it's got thousands upon thousands of followers. And so being able to even get on there and post in that, hey, this particular dental office, and you can do it neutrally. You don't have to say, this is my office and I am looking for, but you can say, hey, I know that, this office is looking for somebody to hire. So those are good groups to kind of look into as well. So kind of expanding out of just the traditional job post if you don't get what you're looking for in those, and kind of moving to the social media route as an option as well.
So what do you think about this? Because I've done it before with varying degrees of success or possibly failure, if that's what I have to call it. I kind of forget about it, but then I come full circle. And again, we've also had kind of the core team has not changed in a while. So I feel like I've tapped out the resource, but where I'm going with this is we've done before where it's a finder fee where I'll tell the team, hey, if you find, you guys know other dental assistants and you know other people, that who would you want working alongside you? Yeah. Who do you think would be a good fit here? Yeah. And if they come in and they make it to the 90 days and we end up hiring them, then you get, I think we've done $150 one time, $250 another. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it.
Okay.
I love it because, first of all, and this ties back to something we were talking about in another podcast episode, but so much of that new employee's success on the team depends on the team accepting that employee and actually going, okay, no, we see potential in this. If that person is completely unknown to the team has a tendency to be a little bit more critical of that person. If it's somebody that's been hand selected by a team member, there's almost like this immediate trust factor that the team has, and they're much more willing to extend grace and actually invest in this person. So that's a nice side benefit. And then everybody loves to get a little extra cash. So to be able to incentivize them with that cash, I think is a great idea.
And that's true. And the cash is also for making sure they're successful, because it's not like you found this person. They had to make it through their 90 days. Yeah. So I think that's how I protect myself from, every assistant bringing in every person they've ever talked to and said, here, apply. I want to make money. Yeah. Okay, well, and I need to revisit that. Like I said, I think we've got some employees that they've heard me offer this and they only know the pool of people they know. Yeah. It's not like they're meeting new people.
No. But even getting them invested in that to where so often the practice owner is really the only one thinking about, I've got to fill this position. So there's a lot of pressure on the practice owner to find this unicorn of a candidate to come in and to join the team. And so to kind of divide that responsibility up where the team realizes, hey, this is on me too. So for example, my client that's had trouble filling this position, for the team to know, hey, I could have had a chance too. Yes, I'm frustrated that we're still short-staffed. Gosh, I wish we could get a dental assistant in here. But you know what? I've been trying too, and I can't find anybody either. So I know it's not just the doctor that's pooping out on this and not really trying that hard. I can tell she's trying because I've been trying too, right. And I can't find anybody. So it kind of disperses the responsibility to the team and makes them aware of how hard the doctor probably has been trying to fill this position.
So then to play devil's advocate or whatever it is that I'm playing here, I think I hesitate a little bit with that because then I start going, and I mentioned this in the last podcast, then is that going to make this team member start going, I can't find any, she can't find anybody, she can't find anybody, and the other 4 girls on the team can't find somebody, so well, then she must be really wanting to keep me here, and I better ask for my raise now or whatever because it's so hard to find somebody.
Yeah.
How do you not get yourself in that situation?
So one of the great things about you is I don't think you have to worry about that because for you pay competitively and you've got lots of extra perks that you offer. I think the practice owner that has to worry about that is the one that's been able to kind of get by with paying staff members probably lower than market value and not really offering a lot of extras. So I think that should cause self-reflection to go, if I'm worried about that, which is a legitimate concern, like if my employees realize that there's nobody else out there, and if they come to me and go, well, I need more now, am I worried about that? Well, let me think about it. What do I offer? Am I competitive from a salary standpoint, or should I be concerned? And I think if we answer the question, no, I think I should be concerned, or I think the worst response is, I have no clue.
To be strategic.
Yeah. So I think in that particular case, just thinking about your team, with all the perks that you offer, the competitive pay, you're at or above market value with all of your employees. If somebody came to you and said, wow, I realize nobody else out there is willing to work, I could use more money. Let's talk about a pay raise. It really becomes a game of risk of, okay, could she truly go somewhere else and make more? Is there an office out there that will hire her right now? Yeah. But will she make more, not only on an hourly standpoint, but with all the other perks?
I would imagine she would make more hourly because of the market right now.
Yeah.
Because everybody's trying to, so they're going to pay, $3-4 an hour more than really this person's worth.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I don't think somebody else is going to be as competitive with, like you're saying, all the rest, with the hours, with the this, with the that.
Yep.
So it goes back to then, what does the employee value?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's where for me too, because if you do value that dollar amount more than the rest, and you probably don't belong on my team anyway.
Yep. Exactly.
I have to remind myself. You remind me of that next time I start going, because I will. I forget that.
Yeah. But, I think it is a good opportunity if a practice owner has not thought about that. How competitive am I? You need to figure that out, because right now that is the question of the hour and it doesn't mean that you have to be the highest paying. It doesn't mean that you have to have these perfect hours. I'm not saying that. It just means that we have to have thought through the process, and maybe we do work longer hours. Maybe we've got long days. Are we making up for that with extra competitive pay or perks that really counterbalance that and make it a good place to work? So I think for you, I wouldn't worry about that if your team knew as they started to look for other employees that, wow, there's nobody out there. I think it's going to be hard for them to go and find a full package like they have at your office. But for practice owners that don't offer that, that's a big deal. Yeah. On that note, one of the things that I feel like we've talked about some in the past is, so we've got your traditional post that we've put it
out there on Dental Post, on Indeed, whatever. We've talked about social media marketing like we just talked about. But you and I have talked a lot about just random talent and looking for good employees in sometimes really odd places. So tell me your thoughts on that.
So I do like that because it's thinking outside the box some. And so things that I would look at, for one of my instructors and mentors had said, and I had the opportunity to work in his practice. One of the best employees I have ever seen. Apparently he found her at a restaurant and she was his waitress. And he's like, I was just watching her. And of course, this is like probably back in the 80s, right? Yeah. So, but he's watching her zip around and not miss a beat. And he approached her and said, hey, it was a small town, etc. So he trained her. And talk about retention, like 30 years later, right? She's still in the practice. So I do believe that there are people that when you're kind of just watching them, and I had one, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I went to a store at the mall.
Yes.
And this sales lady was just watching her interactions, not just with me, but I was watching her, I was in line or whatever, and there was a customer in front of me, and that customer was being kind of ridiculous with whatever she's being ridiculous with. I can't remember the details, but the way she handled this woman, I was like, oh my gosh, of all the crazies, like dental office, we attract all the crazies of the crazies, right? So if this woman could handle this crazy situation, and you're a mall employee, you're probably making minimum wage and probably have insurance benefits, and you're managing that with such proficiency. I was like, dude, there's no way. I mean, you would excel in my office with our crazies to have you at the front desk. So we did approach her. And I think for her, she was a little bit older and like a career change was not something she felt comfortable with at that point in her life. But so I think it's a fantastic idea. I think some of the challenges are how do you... for somebody who doesn't know dental, to come in and learn dental, and not just learn dental like tooth numbers and all of that, but just the nuances of a dental office and a dental environment. Like, we're a strange breed unto ourselves here, and certain things that happen in a dental office that wouldn't happen working for the mall or working for Taco Bell, which each of those have their own crazy nuances. So, to defend ourselves there a minute, but anyway, I do think that there is some, if you have the time to train and think outside the box, like we have talked about. So is this person going to go from selling clothes to being my chairside assistant? No, obviously not. You've got to have certain certifications, blah, 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 blah. But could this person be taught to be an amazing checkout person? And because of her people skills and being able to calm people down and get them in the right way, maybe she could collect more money than anybody ever has before.
Exactly.
Just literally just this past week after I posted in Dental Post and I got my 11, narrowed it down to 8. Now I'm reaching out, and I want to say of the 8 I reached out to, probably 5 replied. And I think one of them, I didn't immediately send to because I wanted kind of, I wanted easy. I want somebody who already knows dentrix and tooth numbers and aging reports and all of that, right? I didn't want to have to train and spend a lot of effort on. And so there was one that she's not been in dental. And so I ignored her resume, right? And then like Bethany and I, you and I talked, and we were talking about how thinking outside the box, and if we could, for our 2 front desk girls, could we get some help for them? If we could get somebody else who would, something as simple as scanning paperwork and sending out these reminder texts and doing whatever, like something I could pay a high school student to do.
Exactly.
Would that make them have less stress on their plates? So then, in that case, then I don't really need a proficient dental person.
Right.
So then I went back and I looked back. And so number 6 of the 8 applicants, I sent her a text, and no joke, of all the people who replied back, right, there were 2 people who had been in dental for a long time, like, 15, 18 years, and had good resumes, like, longevity in offices and things like that. So this is something else I'm going to ask you about here in a minute, to segue into a different, somewhat related topic, but I texted and I said, hey, tell me, thank you for your reply to our post. Tell me what it is that you're looking for in a new work home. And question number 2 was, why do you think I should hire you? Something like that, right? So the 2 people who had dental backgrounds, that on paper from their resume, I was like, okay, good. This is what I want. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. Their responses were useless. And I could pull it out and read it to you and bore you guys all with it. But it was a useless response. Like, what are you looking for in a new dental home? No joke. One of them replied, I recently quit my job at XYZ. What does that have to do with anything?
You didn't even answer the question.
You didn't answer the question. Yeah. And then I said, why should I hire you? And again, we're a pediatric office. You should hire me because I love working with children. Okay, well, you weren't bright enough to go deeper into this question because that's not what I'm trying to ask you.
Right.
Darned if the person who's never been in dental was the one. Yeah. No typos.
Yeah.
Hello, doctor.
Yeah.
Signed her name properly, had periods, and a flow of conversation that made sense.
Yeah.
Though I have not worked in dental, I am looking for blah, 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 whatever she's looking for.
Yep.
That seemed like she would be a perfect fit in our office.
Yeah.
And then why should I hire you? Well, you should hire me because even though I've not worked in dental, the industries that I have worked in have blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So here was a candidate that I ignored.
Yeah.
Because I was like, no dental. I don't have time for that.
Right.
But then I was like, wait a minute. Just yesterday we were talking about how it doesn't have to be a dental person.
Exactly.
This person is smart enough to understand the question and answer it directly, where the 2 dental people were all over the place.
Yeah.
And then this one had attention to detail.
Yeah.
She was capitalizing what she needed to capitalize. She was punctuating, right? Like all those little things. But it's that attention to detail in a job like, verifying insurance at a detailed level or texting a parent back. Because we do text to confirm and do all of this. Well, I would be very reluctant to put the 15-year experienced person who messaged me back with no punctuation and not able to answer my question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you that task.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that my 2 front desk, I can't take that off of you. That should be a simple task, but I can't take that off of you if I hire this lady.
Right.
Well, the other challenge with that is this lady's going to want her 20 plus an hour because she's been in dental for that long and she thinks she's very valuable.
Yeah.
Turns out like the software system, like she's not familiar with what we have and she's not. So here's my challenge then. I've got a 20, an asking of XYZ,
right.
But you're not going to be able to deliver that. Right. But I'm not going to be able to hire you unless I pay you the 25 or whatever you want.
Exactly.
But I'm going to be bitter every day.
Yeah.
Going, well, I've got other people who I pay far less who are able to do far more and train far. So I think we've all been in that boat. And so I guess my point in all of that, I think where you're going with this is I've had to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And so now we're asking this young lady and going, hey, what are you asking? And if she does ask for 18 an hour, well, then I am going to have to ask you to do more than just these 2 tasks.
Right.
But if she comes back and she wants 12 an hour, and I think the industry she's coming from is a minimum hour field.
Yeah.
And you work on tips. So if I can $12 an hour and you can take these 2 tasks off of their plate.
Yeah.
Hired, sold, done.
Yeah.
And just see where her potential goes. So I think that was the point. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's where you were going with this, is we are having to think outside the box a little bit here.
Well, and even in thinking outside the box, we sometimes or often find better candidates ultimately. But historically, we've been so tied to that dental history because it is a quirky field. There's a lot of things to know. There's a lot of nuances that it takes a while for somebody new to pick up on, that it just feels easier to just hire the person with the experience and just pay them what they're asking and get it over with. But sometimes in doing that and being so committed to that, we miss out on the better candidate. And yes, on paper, she may not look like the better candidate, but the fact that we know we could immediately turn texting over to her and she's going to do it well because she did it well with you. She's already proven herself in that capacity. That's huge. And we couldn't do that with the other candidate. We're probably going to be paying this new to dental candidate far less than the one that has the dental background. And, even beyond the new candidate that you're looking at, I'm thinking about one person on your team that we brought her in years ago. Again, with this same concept, that we were passionate about this concept at the time, you and I were, and we found her, and again, customer service background. I think she was working in a clothing store, retail somehow, and brought in her, trained her from the ground up. She had a lot to learn. So it was definitely a slow progress. But I think where she is now, again, fantastic at that customer service side of it, and has taken on more than I think we ever expected her to take on.
And that too, thinking outside, again, the traditional lines of, yes, she is great at all the customer service stuff, but she can't really answer a lot of the dental type questions.
Yes.
And me wanting things easy, gosh, if I could just have somebody who could do both. Can you be the customer service person and answer the dental question? Well, that's the unicorn I'm looking for, because the people that can do that, at least in my experience of what I'm finding, but they can't catch on to the text to check in. The online paperwork is bothering them. Yeah. They're used to this one software. So they're a little bit older and more seasoned. Yeah. And that's why they're able to answer the dental type questions. Like they've been experienced in that. Yeah. But then they're missing out on the other things that now happen in a dental office. Yeah. Like we're a technology forward practice. Yeah. And, so for us, like you've got to be able to do both. And to put all of that on one person is unfair and really impractical now. Yeah. And then you couple on the post-pandemic situation of all of those people that can do that are probably already absorbed somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah. So we've really got to change our expectations. And again, I don't want it to be a lowering of standards. It's just a change of expectations and be willing to be more flexible in your thinking. Yeah. Because if you're going to be rigid, you're going to lose out. Yeah. Yeah. We unfortunately, we're not to where we could stick to rigidity.
Well, and I think this is part of this shift that is having to happen now in dental practices where, first of all, when we had a job opening, there were plenty of dental experienced people that we could select from to fill that position. And so we didn't have to put a ton of emphasis in training. It was literally just come on board. Here's the role. You know the role, right? Okay. Yeah. This is how we specifically do it. You good? Awesome. And then that candidate would be just fine. And I feel like now that is forcing us to kind of reevaluate our onboarding process as well, because first of all, we have fewer candidates to choose from. So we're having to pick from a smaller pool where they don't have this wealth of experience, or maybe they were only experienced in one aspect of the dental office. And so we're having to do more training in the onboarding process. Or if we're looking for a brand new person to the dental field, that we have to shift our emphasis away from just plug and play. You just sit there and do the job that you know to do, to, okay, now how do we then account for either somebody who's less experienced or even no experience and invest more time into the training process.
Well, and I think there too, where you've got the older subset of people that have been there longer and know, but are mostly in their offices. And then if it's somebody even in the last 8 to 10 years, the challenge now, previously you had Dentrix, EagleSoft, one other. Yeah. And now there's a ton of different ones. Yeah. There's like so much competition in other parts of, field. So you've got to know a lot of different things. I think things that I didn't even, anticipate earlier, but now it's like, for example, from pediatric practice to pediatric practice. Yeah. We had somebody the other day that came in and she had been in an older pediatric practice. Yeah. Well, she hadn't heard of SDF. Yeah. Yeah. So here she's walking in going, no, I'm very comfortable. I present treatment plans. Well, I know you didn't come from a laser office. Well, we're a laser office. So now we've got to have to do a ton of training on all of that. Yeah. We're going to have to do a ton. So it's just materials and technology are also changing so fast. Yeah. And so I think the plug and go candidate is not there anymore because, this office may have done CEREC. That office doesn't do CEREC. This office has this and that office. So it's just made things even more complex. Yeah. And I don't think the applicant will ever realize that. Right. They think they know it. And this is why I'm
100%.
This is why I'm worth $50 an hour because I know this. Well, you don't really. It's going to be some onboarding that we're going to have to do. Yeah. Yeah. And preparing the candidate for that. So if you are in the position where you found this great candidate, it happened to be one of the 8 and it happened to fit the role that you're looking for, even to your point, preparing that very experienced candidate for the diversity that they're going to experience in this office because we do things differently. I can think about somebody that we brought onto your team. And again, came with a lot of experience, great experience. But we warned her from the beginning,
we do things very differently in this office. We're very focused on kind of next level, doing things better than. We're constantly changing. We're not one of these offices that just kind of, here's our system and now we're going to stick to it for the next 10 years. We're like, okay, here's our system, but we might change it next month, or we might change it 6 months from now if we know that something better has come along. And so we kind of prepared her for that type of training. And so then this super experienced person came in knowing, hey, I've got to release what I've known and the systems that I've committed to, because they've kind of warned me in the onboarding process that we do things differently here, and just give it a chance. Experience it first for a little bit and then bring us your ideas.
Well, I even think in the hiring moment, the female that I saw the other day that came in, and again, on paper, she looked amazing. And then the text experience was so not amazing. But I'm like, I can't really recant the interview now. Like, that would have been too awkward. Okay, go ahead and come on in. Let's see if she even shows up. Well, she showed up. And as we're talking, she was uber confident. You could tell she was just very confident about her skill set and all of this. And a couple of comments that she made, I was like, oh, sweetie, your confidence is a little overdone here.
Yeah.
And so because in my mind, I was like, somebody who's that confident and thinks she's got this, look on paper, she's probably going to be asking, $65 an hour to come in. And I've got to already start laying the groundwork for, oh, you don't know SDF and you're not a laser either. And you haven't done peds in a while. And so, that's going to be a lot of training for us on the front end. So you probably won't be stepping into doing treatment plans for a while.
Yeah.
So therefore, when we give her, $20 an hour instead of the 75 she was expecting, hopefully I planted some seeds of reality there that she's going to have to learn some things there too. And I think that's a challenge now too, that all these candidates coming in thinking they know a lot. And maybe traditionally you did know a lot, or maybe the office you came from, you knew a lot about that particular office. But there are so many, I think offices have always been different, regardless of if you're a perio office and you're going from one perio to another, etc. I think there's always been differences in offices, but now there are literal differences in offices with software and technology and procedures and things like that.
Even pandemic differences now, especially if they were out of the field during the core of the pandemic and they are now coming back into the field. There's a lot of differences that offices have made in that process. And some of those things are potentially relaxing, but I feel like this kind of perpetual change that will continue to have to happen. Even in your office, the text to check in and the temp checks and the COVID questionnaire and all of that. Now, some of those things were relaxing, but some of them we're still keeping. And so for somebody to step into that, even that alone is a lot of changes to consume and to understand. So it really has become just, there is no cut and dry practice anymore. There's just, each practice is very, very, very unique, and that candidate has to be prepared for that.
Right. And that's the thing. I don't think the candidates are all prepared for that. And so then to retain somebody who walks in the door going, well, what do you, it's like this, I think from their viewpoint, it's I'm being picked on, or this office is crazy, or whatever it is. Yeah. And so really, have we on our side, so what can I do to keep you, because you're going to be in fight or flight mode here. Yeah. And I think that's different for us too, where we've kind of gone, well, yeah, if you can't assimilate, get out of here. Yeah. And it's like, well, you were the one that showed up of the 8, and whose salary we could actually negotiate. So do I really want you walking out because I've just posted, I don't have another option here. So it's having for us to go, okay, how do I assimilate you? How do I not bombard you? Because I don't think the candidates are at all paying attention to how different it is. I think they definitely know it's, I've got 5 interviews. Somebody's going to hire me here.
Exactly.
So it's their game. They know it. Yeah. So I've got to be the one to be patient. Again, I'm not going to lower my standards for you. Right. But I've got to be patient and figure out how can I slowly onboard you rather than the typical, hey, this is the expectation right out the gates. Yeah.
And I think the onboarding process, I mean, one of the strengths in your offices, I feel like we've historically had a good onboarding process. One of the phrases that you use a lot is we're slow to hire and we're quick to fire. And that is absolutely the truth because we have a really good onboarding process. So to kind of dive into some of that a little bit, one of the things that I think is really important in those first 90 days, and you and I have talked about this, there's nothing magical about 90 days. It's just a time frame that we have in our mind that we know we are extra involved in evaluating that candidate. And this isn't blindsiding the candidate. We are telling the candidate up front, even in the offer letter that we give and in the conversations that we have, hey, the first 90 days, we'll figure out together if this is going to work. So we're being really clear in that.
And we even, like, when they talk to me, I'm like, you'll be lucky if you make it through your 90 days.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just come right out and like negative Nelly, right? But you'll be lucky if you make it through your 90 days. Not many people do, but if you do, I mean, it's celebration
You'll be here
time.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just kind of planting that seed in their head too, to go, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot asked of you, but we think we're worth it.
Yeah.
And if you don't think we're worth it, then you don't need to stay past the 90 days anyway.
Absolutely.
So anyway, you were saying, so
well,
we on
and
board.
I think that's what's important too is, again, that's being proud of what you do have to offer. And so that onboarding process, you can be really clear like that with candidates, even in a dilapidated market, right? Even when we're like, oh shoot, where have all the good ones gone? We can still be very clear and say, this 90 days is make or break. You'll be lucky if you make it out of it. Why can we communicate with such confidence? Why would that not send the candidate running down the next place? Well, it's because of the way that we've set up the practice, starting from the job post to go, we are glitz and glam. Look at all of this. And when you have a lot of really great things to offer, you can be that confident in the process because we know that candidate likely has a choice of 5 other places. But why do they want to work here? Well, they want to work here because of, yes, the perks that we offer here, but also because when you look around at our team, we've got people that stay. And also because we're not one of these practices that we're just going to settle in and turn antiquated over time. And you're just going to ride into this boring sunset with us. No, we're constantly innovating, constantly changing, constantly doing trainings and things like that. So with your office in particular, it's a really exciting office that we set that up starting in the job post that you put out. And then when we start interviewing, we've established that this is a different office. It's going to function differently. And you got to be ready to kind of change and grow and constantly change and grow because of the amount of work we put into the change and the improvements here. If you don't like that, now's your chance. Like, go ahead and go on. But I feel like we've been really, really lucky in that level of clarity and communication. The people that truly want to be a part of a challenge and they want to learn and they want to grow, they're attracted to that. And they're like, no. Even the experienced person that we hired that has a ton of experience, she was attracted to that idea of, no, I want a challenge. I want to do something that pushes me outside myself. And so that's what drew her to our practice as opposed to staying at her practice or choosing other offices.
And she had been at that practice for, I think, 10 years or had been, maybe it's 10 years of experience, but she'd been at that office. And even being in our office for that 90 days, her old office kept calling her and offering her more money. So I found it very interesting. And I think she is kind of a rare candidate in that she is ready to put herself through undoing 10 years of things that she's learned and really cherry picking what's going to serve her now in her new role. But I think she wants to be able to learn new things. And, you know, she's still, I guess, something mid-30s, she's realized that she doesn't want to be in an antiquated office. And for somebody who doesn't like change, they're going to figure out real quick. And it is, I think for me, initially, I would take that personally and kind of disappointed, like, what did you not like about us?
Yeah.
And I was trying to make this square fit into my round. And now it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with us. It's just we have different things we want.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a part of an office that functions the way we do, then it's here and you hear your opportunities for success.
Right.
And if it's not, or maybe it's what you think you want, right? Like I was almost going, maybe she thinks she wants change. Maybe she thinks she wants growth because those are buzzwords that are going to make her feel good. And then you get into it and then you're like, this is not what I wanted. I really do want to just scan in documents all day like I did at my previous job, right? Like I could do that. So I feel like it is, you know, flex on both people's side. And the clearer you communicate that
up front, just from the beginning. And having that clarity in your mind to know, what are we truly about? Like, have we really thought about what makes us unique as an office? Can we really communicate with clarity to this candidate what they're walking into. And we want to be clear and honest. As much as we want to showcase the glitz and the glam and what's great about our office, we also want to be honest about what may not be great. You may not like a challenge. You may not want to change the things that you've always done, and being able to say that with clarity and go, it's okay. If that's not what you're looking for, we would rather know that now in this interview process or in the first 90 days than to painfully coexist together, past that. So I think we've got to have that clarity of what are we all about? What's truly great about the practice? What is the onboarding process going to be like? Do we even know? I mean, I feel like you have more involvement in that process than most practice owners do. And I think it's important for the practice owner to be involved in how are we involved in the onboarding process? Do I know who's training this person? Do I know how they're doing it? And it doesn't mean that you're sitting with the candidate every day or you're touching base with them and patting them on the back at the end of the day. No, we don't have to do that. We just have to know, hey, person who's training this candidate, do we know what we're doing? We got a plan? What are we doing? Okay, great. Good. Because we've got to have some level of involvement in that onboarding process.
And honestly, that's come over time. Like, we didn't always do that, right? But we've had so many fails with that, as a practice, over the years, and finally figuring out and going, man, we probably blew it with this candidate, or we probably overwhelmed that one, or we were very disorganized in how we did this. And it made sense to us. I think one of the things that I laugh about now, but it was definitely like, oh my gosh, what a dumb moment here. But myself and my manager, we are both very much like, you hand us a list.
Yeah.
And great. Then all of the steps are on that list, and I just follow the list.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't until, my associate, he comes along and he's like, what are all these words? Like, I need pictures. And I thought he was being funny. And he's like, I don't learn that way at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, light bulb moment for myself and my manager. We're like, no wonder we are terrible at teaching. And no wonder we've had like such a rough time onboarding, because we both happen to think the same way.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if she was a picture person and I was a words person, because we'd have some of both. I mean, how long did it take us to do that? 6 years into the practice, 7 years before we finally were like, what? And so even me, like, asking my assistant something as simple as, when I look at Google Maps, I go straight to the directions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't know how to read a map and these pictures and which way I'm oriented, right? Like, just tell me exactly what I'm doing. In 1 mile, I'm taking a right. And and my assistant was like, dude, I can't look at the directions at all. I've got to look at the map. And so we both are just staring at each other like, what? Like, just different learning styles and approaches. But I think that was eye-opening for me to go, well, no wonder we've really struggled with a lot of onboarding for years.
Yeah.
And helped us fine-tune and tweak over the last couple of years to go, okay, there can't be just one way to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, both of us had the same way. And so we were assuming that every other person was going to be that way too. And now we've got different ways to onboard. And we've got, a set of directions. And hey, are you a bulleted
Visual
point?
learner,
Or do you want it in this graphic? Like, what do you need?
Yeah.
And like you said, having some preparation for that, because that was one thing we were terrible at for years. Like, we just all assumed.
Yeah.
And then this candidate would show up and it would be a blundering mess on everybody's side, and we looked disorganized and we looked chaotic.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a misstep. And now we say, okay, well, this person's coming. This person, in theory, has Dentrix knowledge and has this and has this. So what can we do to test this person's thing?
Yeah. And where do we want to start with
Where
them?
do we want to start?
Yeah.
And how long do we anticipate we're going to need? And this person's had 10 years in an office that was Dentrix. Well, great. Then I'm going to put the Dentrix training manual aside and we're going to move on to this step.
Exactly.
And really customizing it for what we're seeing. And if it's somebody who's, new to dental, well, obviously I'm not going to give them start scheduling.
Right.
That we're setting that person up for failure.
Yeah.
And so I think setting up for success, like you said, starts with the post. Like, have we clearly communicated what it is that we're looking for?
Yeah.
So we can weed out the people that don't fit that. Then have we done a good job during the interview process? Yeah. And so I think part of that too, it's kind of counterintuitive here going, well, there's nobody there and I only have 2 applicants and you still want me to do this. Shouldn't I just hire anybody? No, because that's still going to set up for a disappointment for all sides. But I think the point being that we do have to think outside the box a little bit. It's not going to be that plug and chug that it was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
we're going to have to think.
Yeah. And if we'll put some emphasis into thinking through this process from the start of it, creating a good post, reevaluating, are we truly competitive in our market? And if we're not competitive for whatever reason, how can we get competitive? And then, okay, how do we take the candidate through this interview process and we're clear, but we're also creating some excitement about our office. And then the final step being the training and the onboarding, and how can we make sure that we're clear on what is this person starting with? How quickly do we anticipate them getting up to speed on certain tasks? And then incorporating multiple points of feedback throughout that first 90 days. It's a good chance to think through all those steps of the process, because if we don't have a dental candidate that applies, and we're having to think outside the box and go, okay, I drove through Taco Bell and there was a really great person at that checkout window. Maybe I need to talk to that person. Well, if we've thought through those steps of the interview process and the onboarding process and all of that, then that's a much easier transition in our mind to, okay, we've got a system in place that we can move this non-dental person through. Whereas if we haven't thought through all of that, it's really overwhelming.
And I would say even just the thought of thinking about all the different steps is super overwhelming. And I think we're all so busy in what we're doing and trying to keep up with, the state board orders and OSHA orders. It's just, there's so much to think about these days. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And so now to have to think about onboarding another person, and I've not had to do this that way before. I mean, I think it's definitely, it can be mentally
draining.
Defeating. Yeah, defeating. And I just don't want to. I don't want to have to do all that. I'm a great doctor, and I should be able to pay you whatever, and you should be lucky to be able to come in these doors and work for me, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I wish it could be, but the realities of today are not that. And if we're not pushing ourselves in those directions to make it easier for ourselves in the long run, we do need to stop and make that investment of time and energy in that. I'm grateful for you every day because I can talk to you about it. You help my team put it in place. Yeah. But for anybody who doesn't have a Bethany, I feel bad for you. But if you don't have a Bethany, then, you do need to stop and think about these steps that traditionally we've not had to think about before. And we don't want to think about one more thing, but this is so important. Like, we can't do what we do without our team.
Yeah.
And that is right at stake right now.
Absolutely. Well, great. I feel like we mentioned failures throughout this one, so we didn't have to, trick ourselves into saying something.
What mistakes? What failures? What are you talking about here?
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone. But we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.